Chris Kwiecinski, so excited to get the chat with you and, of course, to chat about the NBA and about the Bulls because they have been one of the more active teams at the trade deadline here. As we are recording this, we've got less than 30 minutes till the NBA trade deadline. The cap here is at 2 o'clock. We're going to hear from AK in a little bit. I think he speaks around 3:30 here, but the Bulls they've been aggressive. They've made, so far on my account, a total of 6 moves. This roster looks completely different. So they've completely overhauled the roster here. Some of the main pieces like Vooch, Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, Kevin Huerter too. They're all gone. They are now playing for teams that are contending teams. So let's just start here. What do you make of some of the moves that the Bulls have made so far?
Yeah, when you look at them all, this is clearly a long time coming because I mean, it feels like we've been asking this question for the last 2, 3 years. Like, are they going to move Kobe? Are they going to move Vooch? And I think the Vooch move is one that I feel like we saw coming last year when he did the exit interviews when he was like, I'd love to play for a contending team at some point. And like he was very candid, he was very open, and I felt like it was only a matter of time because like this Bulls team is obviously not contending. They're nowhere near contention. They've just been sitting in that play-in bubble, mired in that mediocrity for so
Middle.
long.
They've
Yeah,
been stuck in the middle.
it's just kind of stuck there. And this is that move that's kind of like, okay, well, we got to take a step backwards to go forward. Although this kind of sets them up for a summer. And I think the big picture part of it is you have 10 expiring contracts or 10 players you can move on from this summer. That leads you to a free agency period where you're like, okay, well, we can go and get guys. But also you have a handful of players where if you like how they play, you can keep them around.
Yeah, and one of those players could be Jaden Ivey. The Bulls made a trade for him as part of a three-team trade with the Pistons and the Timberwolves. Obviously, they got Jaden Ivey, his mom, head basketball coach, women's basketball coach at Notre Dame here, and Mike Conley Jr. from the Wolves. And the Bulls sent Kevin Huerter and Dario Saric to the Pistons. By the way, Mike Conley, he has been moved as well, and that was something that was reportedly reported first when the Bulls got him, that they were trying to move on from him as well. Okay, so Jaden Ivey, obviously someone third year in the NBA, missed a lot of last season. Believe he broke his fibula, quite an injury there. That's going to take some time to rehab and even get back to who he was, because before the injury he was averaging, I believe, 17.6 points a game in the first 30 games. Obviously this is someone that fits their youth movement, young with NBA experience, and someone that they can continue to develop, similar to Anthony Simons. Obviously, he was part of the trade that sent Vooch to Boston, and as you mentioned, Vooch has made it pretty publicly known that, obviously, with where he's at that point in his career, he is a durable big, and offensively well as well, what he could bring on that end too. But he wants to be a part of a contending team, and now he is going to the Boston Celtics. Celtics have certainly shocked a lot of us this NBA season, especially with no Jason Tatum. Jaylen Brown has been playing out of his mind, but they're right now third in the Eastern Conference standing. So I mean, you look at this roster and you can't help but wonder, one, how do we get here? Two, what's the big picture here? Are we rebuilding? Are we tanking? Because right now they have picked up young players. And even with the guys on this roster, they've got guys with expiring contracts too. So obviously that puts them in a position when it comes to be under the salary cap here. And then they've, of course, added some draft capital. They picked up 9 second-round draft picks, so totaling to 14. Um,
14. Can you believe that? Like, what do you do with 14 second round picks? It's just wild to
right,
me.
right. So let's just start here too from this point. How did we get here, Chris?
Yeah,
How the heck
gosh.
did we get here?
I often think back to there's someone that on Twitter had this video where they spliced together highlights from that 21-22 Bull season where they spent like a good chunk of January in first place. And I remember watching that team with Lonzo, with DeMar, with Zach LaVine. Vooch and Io and Kobe. And these were just guys that were playing ball. And I think the big part about it too was watching Lonzo run the point there. And they were so exciting. They spliced together like those highlights with Sarah McLachlan's "I'll Remember You," the very sad song from the pet commercials. It was one of those moments where you're reminiscent thinking about what if, they had this great, exciting team and everything was great. And then Lonzo's knee gets hurt, and then everything just kind of falls apart, and they were just kind of mired in mediocrity. They can never pull themselves out of it thanks to injuries and different things and like all this kind of stuff. And from there, it was just a matter of like we're wondering, well, what are you going to do now? Because when it became pretty obvious it wasn't working, can you kind of go back to the 2024, the midway point of the season, especially? I mean, that's what we both came to Chicago, is that midway point there between the 23-24 season. And we got here, we were like, well, now what? And you got guys like, I think it was Levine that was injured, and we were wondering what's going to go on. And then he ended up having surgery on his foot, and he was out for the rest of the year. And it was one of those where like, oh, okay, cool. Now what? And then we're thinking, well, at this point, they're going to have to start breaking this team up if they want to get pieces that's going to improve everything. And this really has felt like a long time coming. And I think you have to start wondering, would they have gotten first round picks instead of second round picks had they started to or decided to break up this team sooner or at a different trade deadline? I think there was a report last year too with Lonzo where I think Memphis was in on him with a first round pick and Marcus Smart, which for an expiring contract for a first round pick, like the Bulls clearly didn't win the playing tournament. They lost to the Heat. Like, I think they got their butts kicked too, if I remember correctly about that. And but we're sitting here like if you made these moves earlier, you probably have first round picks, especially
Yeah.
looking at a 2026 NBA draft. Like this draft, I love NBA drafts. I haven't been excited about a draft
Right.
like this one in so long. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, there's so many great players. If the Bulls can get a top three pick, that's a game changer for this franchise. But that's putting a lot of the future in chance with the lottery and all that kind of stuff too. So it's kind of like, what's the deal here?
Yeah. You talk about the players of DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Vooch, Lonzo Ball, the 2024 season when DeMar was still here. DeMar, respect him a lot, like former Spur, but he slowed this team down a bit with his play style. So you see them obviously move on from him, but having even Zach LaVine for a portion of last season, right? It did open things up a little bit more. And then going into the season, even this year, with no Zach, with no DeMar, right? It allowed them to, in a sense, play more freer. So a lot of changes here. But you look at it and they couldn't get a first round pick. And even with the Caruso trade as well, couldn't get a first round pick. And now they've got a plethora of second round draft picks. You have to think, what are they going to do with some of these picks? And I look at the draft. Obviously, I think you can still find valuable guys in the second round. And look at Io, right? But that also leads me to question, do you trust them to draft well? Because you look at who they've traded away. Io, someone who they drafted. Kobe obviously was not drafted by this front office, but someone that the Bulls themselves drafted. Dalen Terry as well. Again, do you trust them? Do you trust this front office to take you in the direction that you need to go to win consistently?
Oh
And
my gosh.
obviously, there's been a lot of talk about, well, they need that superstar player, right? Derrick Rose talked about it a few weeks ago, how he looks at the roster. They need that superstar guy. They're wanting to obviously build around Modest Buzelis and Josh Giddey. Two guys that going into the NBA trade deadline, I had heard that they weren't willing to move those guys. Everyone else is a free for all. So they're certainly going to be sellers, right? I'm a little shocked here that they moved on from both Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu. I know the deals for Kobe had been drying up a little bit because of like Kobe obviously had a strong season last year, especially at the end there. But Kobe this season has been hurt, has been really inconsistent. Ayo Dosunmu, really great season so far, averaging what 15 points a game, plays really well alongside Josh Giddey. So I'm shocked that they moved on from Io here.
I I think Io doesn't shock me as much as the Kobe trade, only because like I remember we were talking about it the other day too, especially in the morning. We are starting to see like, okay, the deals are starting to dry up, and I know a lot of the reports were kind of matching up with what we were hearing too, which like it doesn't really that surprise me that much when you consider his injury history. But the Io one shocked me a little bit, especially what they got back for him. When you get 4 second round picks from the Timberwolves, like for okay, Io, a player that bleeds Chicago, that loves this city, a guy that's from here that understands what it takes to win, eh, that can play both ways. Is a fantastic defender, got so much better with his shot. A guy that averages 15 points per game that can come off the bench if needed. We saw him do that in Chicago. We also saw him start a lot of games too. Going to Minnesota is a perfect spot for him because he doesn't cost that much. It's not like Mike Conley who had a $10 million price tag on his contract. And we all thought that the Timberwolves were going to make a swing or two at Giannis, and they ended up pivoting. And you're getting a young player like Io who could defend, who could shoot. And the Bulls got Rob Dillingham and they got Leonard Miller. Who? I don't know any of these guys. Like, I know Rob Dillingham was a first round pick, a top 10 pick in 2024, but like that's a guy that never really materialized. And maybe he's under contract for a couple more years. But for Io, I just hate that deal for a guy that's so valuable to this team, that's so valuable to a contender, and you're not getting a first for him. Like, I'm sorry, but like that shocked me a lot more. I like the Kobe deal for Kobe specifically because he can come off the bench in that regard. He's so much better when you can look to him for these dynamic plays. And I think Colin Sexton's I think he's a better player as a starting point guard for the Bulls. As he's so efficient as a shooter. I think that's something that Billy's going to really utilize well. But I think with Kobe, if you bring him off the bench and you can find him in spots with LaMelo Ball there, I think that's a really good combination. Concanapple, I mean, it's guys that's been a flamethrower as a rookie so far. I think that's great. But the Io trade, I cannot fathom, what they were thinking, only getting back second round picks. One of them is only going to be in the 26th draft. And like we're talking about, like when you make the trade for Vooch and you get that pick, the more favorable of like 4 or 5 teams, it's most likely going to be the Pelicans pick, which is number 32 overall in the 26th draft. That's basically a late first round pick. I like that a lot because you go back to last couple years, uh, guys that were available in that time frame. I mean, are 4 year experienced players. I think a guy the last year I was thinking might slip into that range was Ryan Kalkbrenner from Creighton, very good defensive center that I'm pretty sure went late in the first round. So he didn't last that long. But like there's gonna be guys that slip into that range that would really fit what the Bulls want, especially coming off the bench, especially from a defensive point of view. But right now, it's just kind of like if this is the best you got, you're really setting yourself up for free agency where you have to make swings. You have to find a guy that's going to lead you. And I mean, maybe Isaac Okoro it becomes a hard, like a very solid bench player for the Bulls. He can't be relied on as like a full-time starter. That's not a guy that's going to take you to where you want to be. Maybe Colin Sexton plays really well. That's still not a star player. Anthony Simons too. Maybe before this 2 o'clock, we got what the 12 minutes for what it is. Maybe someone gets dealt the next 12 minutes. But like I just don't see a pathway to where they're going to be in a position this upcoming NBA draft where you can get 2, maybe 3 players that is really going to help you and select them and get them into your franchise, into your team, into your roster, and get them up to speed and fit them alongside with what you just mentioned, with Josh Giddey, with Modest Buzelis, with a Jaden Ivey too. I really like the Jaden move because that's a guy that's played really well in the NBA. You've seen a lot of success, and yeah, sure, it didn't work out in Detroit, but dude's 23 years old. He's 23 and he
Yeah.
can shoot. I mean, Kevin Huerter never really found a shot in Chicago, but giving Jaden Ivey a chance to do that, I think is a great trade. But I just don't understand it for Io, who has so much more value at the trade deadline at this point, with a lot of contenders looking for a guy on a cheap contract that can play 2 ways like that.
I am looking at my phone right now because I believe the Bulls just got included into another trade. Let's
Haha.
look up the details right now. If we can, let's see, Bulls, Bulls, Bulls.
You're right. The Shams Charania from ESPN has
You have
reported
it?
the
I'm trying to look it
Bucks.
up right now.
Yeah, the Bucks and Sun have expanded their earlier trade to a 3-team deal that includes the Bulls, which is the seventh trade the Bulls have made. Ousmane Dieng to Milwaukee and Nick Richards is coming to Chicago. Again, Tina, I say, who? These
Let's
guys
look up
aren't.
Nick Richards.
Let's look up Nick Richards. Let's pull up the player card.
Well, it was
I
money, Jang, because you look at the roster like, oh, they need they need a big. And obviously with him the way he plays, his power, his aggressiveness makes up for that. But now is he going to Milwaukee?
looks like he's going to
Yeah, he's going to
Jang is going to
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee.
Nick Richards. Let's see.
Let's do a little tail of the tape here on Nick Richards. I mean, so far he's looks like he's a averaging 3.2 points per game with 3.2 rebounds per game. My big thing is he is 6'11", so you now have size. There's a big there, see Lachlan Albright being dependent on at 6'9" to play the center position. Yeah, Vooch got away with that because Vooch is a very good basketball player. But a two-way player like Lachlan, putting him in that position so tough. But look, at this point it's all out there where the Bulls are rebuilding. I think someone said it the other day, this is a soft rebuild, which to me it's like no.
Soft rebuild?
Yeah, but like when you're making 7 trades, I think the soft part is because you're getting only second round picks with these guys where and that's the thing. It's like you haven't made a splash where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I see where you're going with that. Because if they got a first round pick, if they somehow got a first in this upcoming draft where you got AJ Despansa, Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, guys that could really turn your team around. Like it just seems like you're just swapping guys out just to get all these expiring contracts to make a free agency swing, and I don't think that's sustainable. Especially so you have to make Chicago a place that people want to be, and right now it doesn't really seem like it's a very desirable place.
Yeah. Okay, so Bulls obviously adding some size here. Nick Richards, 6'11", Usmani, Jang, 6'9". So I mean, you look at the roster, you have a lot of guards here. Um,
The glut is huge.
of so many guards. I'm like, are they going to be like Villanova and play a five guard lineup here?
Hey,
What's
look,
happening? Okay, so just big picture, big picture here, because you've got the draft capital, trade assets, you've got multiple players on the roster that have expiring contracts. I know Jaden Ivey is going to be a restricted free agent, but from the Bulls' perspective, they've got the ability to they've got flexibility. They're going to have flexibility financially. They're going to be under the salary cap here. They've got a ton of draft capital, and they're going to have flexibility to see with some of these young guys these next few months after the All-Star break too, to figure out, okay, do you fit the timeline of Modest Buzelis and Josh Giddey here? So it's so they're in such an interesting position. And again, I'm so curious to know how AK is going to frame this. Is he going to come out and say, hey, like we are in a fully rebuild mode? Because at the beginning of the season, it was building while competing. Let's be honest right now. Like, and Chris, give me your thoughts. Do you think the Bulls even make the play-in right now with this roster that they have?
it really depends on how strong the East is and how things shake out. Because a couple more months until the play-in starts to take its shape. I mean, maybe injuries impact everything, and the Bulls can slip into that. I think the 11th, 10th spot there. Like maybe with the players they have, but without size, it's really hard to see them consistently winning games, especially when you go down to the back end of the season. Sure, you got a lot of great guards. I really like Simons as a player. I like him as a one-year rental. I really like Colin Sexton. I think that's an efficiency at guard that the Bulls just haven't had in a while. But when you have a lot of projects and a lot of reclamation projects like Jaden Ivey and all that kind of stuff, like I really don't see them being in a position. But you know what? That's all for the better. I think that's all for the better when you look at the potential of let's increase our odds at getting a top pick. Because right now, my thing is, like I mentioned before, there's the Boozers, the Petersons, the Bastances, like these are the players that are going to help you out the most. These are the stars that you need. These are going to be the guys that you basically hinge your franchise on. But like I when it comes to other players outside of it, I keep thinking of rising stars. And a player that comes to mind is Keaton Wagler, who from Illinois, probably a one and done player, a guy that has really shown that he's a star. I mean, I saw him last night hit a massive half court shot against Northwestern, which granted Northwestern's struggling right now, but I mean, this is a guy that's putting on a show. He scored 46 in a game this year. Like these are guys you can go out and get to be the future and the cornerstone of your team. But right now, it really looks like one, you need size, but also two, you need to find a star. You need to find someone that you're going to hitch your wagon to, and maybe that's Cam Boozer. Maybe uh, that's just that's Darren Peterson from Kansas, and but you have to get those picks. You have to be in a position to be a top pick, a top three pick, and by doing that, you have to miss the play-in tournament. You have to have a good lottery odds because I mean, Nate Ament's a really good player out of Tennessee. He's a freshman, but Jaden Quintance, a center out of Kentucky, that's also a really good player, but those are guys that are going to fill roles for you that could develop into really solid role players. Those aren't stars. Those aren't star players that are going to take you to the next level. And I just kind of wonder maybe this is what they're trying to do. They're going to draft a really solid star player, hope they can land one of those guys to place alongside the Modesses, the Josh Giddeys, the Jaden Ivies, and then they go and fill in the rest with free agency. But like
Mhm.
it's more of a plan that what we've seen, especially in recent years, where we're just kind of like, what are the Bulls up to? Like, what are they doing? There's no real true path to contention. Now they have at least a path. It's really ambitious. There's a lot of luck involved, but at least there's a path.
I think that right there is a bit refreshing because for so long we've been singing, the Bulls have been singing the same tune, stuck in the middle. Obviously, not going to fully commit to going out and getting a star player, someone who can make a big impact, but also not going to fully tank here. And I obviously I think we'll have more of an idea as the dust settles more here. But again, I'm really curious to know how AK is going to frame this because going from the beginning of the season where you're talking about what you knew that you had multiple guys on the roster that have expiring contracts. Again, he's said time and time again that he wants players that are young with NBA experience. And obviously going into the deadline, I had heard speaking to people around the league how the Bulls obviously weren't willing to move your Josh Giddey, your Modest Buzelis. So it's just going to be interesting to see how they move forward. Obviously, I think the developmental piece will be key here as well. You talk about now we have a sense of direction. Well, the development of like continuing to develop some of these young guys. That's also something that has been a consistent theme for the Bulls here.